Hey, everyone, and welcome back to Better Together, the podcast that shares the stories, lessons, and practical advice from founders and leaders that can help you improve your business. I'm your host, Shawn Sundsvold, along with my partner in business and life, Kelly Sundsvold. Today's guest is someone who truly understands what it means to build a business from the ground up and lead people in a way that actually works. Andrea Hawkins is the founder of Leading Culture Solutions and a leadership expert with a background spanning Fortune 500 companies, entrepreneurship, and organizational psychology. After helping lead teams across global organizations and even building and scaling multiple businesses of her own, she's now focused on one core mission, helping leaders create cultures where people don't just show up, they show up engaged. Her perspective is practical, people first, and rooted in real experience. And today she's sharing what it really takes to lead well and build teams that thrive. Well, Andrea, thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Great to be here.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a really fun conversations. Our intro call was really fun. So I'm really looking forward to, where things go today. Let's get started. Just tell us a little bit about, your current business, Leading Culture Solutions, and what you're doing there.
Yeah. So we are working with organizations and helping them primarily work on culture, right? And making sure that they have cultures where people want to show up. They want to not only do what you ask them to do, but do more than that and really live the mission through the values of the organization to achieve the vision of the organization. So a lot of times we're going in and we're helping organization even understand what do those words even mean? And then how do we get everyone aligned around them in a way that feels authentic for each person that's there? And so it is a lot of fun. It can look like culture evolution initiatives. It can look like strategic planning. It might also look like just coming in for a moment and working with a leadership team and just making sure that leadership team is aligned on the path forward. So it's got a lot of different flavors and, different size organizations, but it's a lot of fun. The work we do infuse a lot of fun with the seriousness of the moment and the matter, but we do manage to have fun and get the work done.
That's really good. Fun can really, make a difference. Shawn and I just got back from a weekend away together. And, just that fun part of, having that learning and the fun really can bring a team together, which is great. So when a company brings you in, what's usually broken or at least like what's not working and the way that they want it to?
Yeah. So sometimes it's an obvious thing, right? So lately, we've been doing a ton of strategic planning with different organizations. As you can imagine, the world for some organizations have flipped upside down with all of the changes that have happened at the federal level and the state level. And organizations are really taking that seriously and saying, okay, with all these changes, how do we continue to move forward? How do we make sure we're achieving our goals overall? So they will ask us to come in and help them get focused on their North Star and where they want to go. But when we get there, sometimes even before we can begin strategic planning, we have to sort of deal with the elephant in the room. Those things that have been there for a long time, and you sort of just like, it's okay. Let's not look over there. Let's look at the shiny object over here. And what we try to do is say, you know what? You're going to be better off if you deal with that shiny object that you've been ignoring for the last year, 6 years, 10 years, 20 years, really, before we dive into this work together. So sometimes the presenting issue is not necessarily the first work that we're doing. Sometimes it's the secondary work or the tertiary work, right? But we get
Right.
to it. But like I said, it really does depend on what the presenting challenges are.
Yeah, there's so many layers to, things like culture and leadership, right? And you come in and you start, and we've talked to a lot of people about this, where it's like they think it's this item, right? But as you start going in and uncovering it, you find the three other items that are actually leading up to, the problem that they're seeing. And so there's that process of identifying and fixing and really helping them see through all those layers to get to that point. As you talk about culture and leadership, I think this is going to be an interesting question, but what does a healthy culture actually look like in real life for a business?
A healthy culture looks like an organization where people come in the morning, if they come in. Sometimes coming in means turning on their computer and logging into, right, a meeting, doing a check-in from their desk because we are in a global society and people are working all over the world. So they're finding ways to connect, right? First thing, starting the day out. And then they're staying in touch with each other throughout the day. Everyone's working on their work, but they're also figuring out how can they be helpful to other people in the organization. That's what a truly healthy organization looks like. Sometimes we get into organizations and, the people that are working say, this is my box. I'm doing the work that's in my box, even though we know, right? You run businesses. So you know that sometimes there are things that pop out that
Hmm.
isn't in anybody's box yet, and
Hmm.
someone needs to deal with it. And so
Yeah.
in healthy organizations, people are willing to raise their hand and say, hey, you know what? This issue came up. Here's what I'm thinking. Love to hear other people's ideas, and let's figure out how we solve the problem. And to also make sure that, Shawn, I want to build on something you said because I see this a lot in organizations too, is a lot of times organizations are dealing with the symptoms and not the
Hmm.
root cause of the problem.
Mm.
So sometimes our work can look like, okay, that's fine that you are whack-a-moling over here and hitting that and hitting that, right? But truly, we need to look at why this is happening in the first place and let's solve that problem. So in healthy organizations, people are willing to peel back those layers, right? And say, all right, what's really going on is this. We don't have a process for this exception that we keep doing, and we probably need a process, and we need to all follow it the same way so that the outcome for our client can feel good and feel consistent. And not one way when Shawn calls them and interacts, and another way when Kelly calls them and interacts with them.
Mhm.
So we
Mm.
see a lot of, undefined processes. We see, other issues related to when an issue comes up, escalating, communicating effectively, like, hey, this new thing came up and we really don't have a way to deal with it. Let's figure it out. Healthy cultures, we see people doing that. We see much more collaboration and we see people trusting each other to do the work that they've been assigned to do, but also be willing to jump in and help each other because that also builds trust.
Love that.
Yeah.
Long-winded answer.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that conversation around culture and healthy workplace, it's an important one to have. And it comes from your experience too. Like you have a background working with major organizations and Fortune 500 companies. So you've seen a lot. So what made you step away from that world?
I know. So let's ride. I love to do this. Let's rattle through them, right? I worked at Aetna, Cigna, MassMutual, the Hartford, United Adoption, Prudential, and TIA Crowd. And I like to say I created my own adult rotation program. So I started in finance. I went to operations. I did product development. I did a little bit of marketing. I did some executive support. I meandered all over these different companies. I spent the majority of my time though in operations, and I really love that because of the variety of what, like,
Mhm.
no 2 days were the same. It was amazing.
Mhm.
So that I just enjoy it. And you both are entrepreneurs, so you know that entrepreneurship is exactly like that, right? Monday is so different than Wednesday, and everything is different every
Yes.
day. And
Yes.
I love the variety. But so I worked in these organizations for a long time, and the thing that I learned about myself is that I really love to solve problems. When you see trouble and, sometimes people are like, yeah, there's trouble. I'm going this way.
Hmm.
Right. I'm like,
Right.
"Right, there's trouble. What do we need to do?" And I'm
Right.
always sort of the one sort of walking toward the fire and figuring out, how do we help it? How do we fix it? How do we make it better? And I just, that would give me energy. And so, in and out of corporate America, some I left, some I was invited to seek alternate opportunities. And on one of those times, my husband and I were dating 11 months, and he said, I want to do my own thing. I want to have my own business. And so we decided to open a coffee shop. I went back into corporate America for 2 more stints, 2 more roles. And then that's when I decided, like, you know what? We're running 2 coffee shops now, and we do it. Like, we do it. It's
Mhm.
successful. It's a great time. I think I'm going to start my own business. So, kind of in the midst of us opening cafes, and I opened that business, and we opened a couple more cafes. So, sort of right in the middle, because I'd seen what it takes to run your own business, and I felt
Mhm.
confident, given the broad breadth of experience that I had. And I also worked for a consulting firm for 3 years before I branched out on my own. So I really had the inside scoop on what does it take to run a consulting business. So sometimes people approach me and they say, oh, I'm thinking about starting a consulting business. And how was it for you? How did you get your first clients? I said, honestly, I never had zero clients. Like I went from the consulting firm, took my 5 clients with me. But I did have the misfortune of a global pandemic. So I started my business in August of 2019. And then, the pandemic hit in 2020. So it
Right.
was a bit of a build, but I wasn't starting with a blank sheet of paper. So yeah.
Yeah, that's nice. That pandemic, man, such a transition time for so many businesses, right? Like you had been going, what I guess it would be 9 months, right? At that point in time, we started ours just a couple months before the pandemic actually hit. Kelly got her first couple clients for the business in January, February, and then March hit. And, it literally shifted everybody's mentality in it, right? So I'm curious, kind of talking about that mentality shift. You went from multiple corporate structured environments to building your own businesses, right?
Yes.
What was something that surprised you about those transitions? Whether it's a good surprise, an oh my God surprise, but what were some of those surprises that you had to face and look?
As much as I was excited about starting my own business, I think I just did not really give enough energy toward you have to do every aspect of a business. Like I worked in really large organizations. So, with the exception of working for the consulting firm. So, right, in really large organizations, they break the work up into these, now I know, right, these teeny little pieces of work, and
Mhm.
everybody gets their tiny little piece of work. But when you run your own business, it's like, you're doing everything, right? You're doing marketing and sales and finance and right operations. And, you're architecting like, what does the infrastructure need to be? And, what are the services I need to wrap around me to support what I'm doing? Because I'm not good at everything, right?
Mhm.
And so I
Right.
think those were the first holes that I filled in was like, all right, I can't be my own admin because I suck at those kinds of things. I always need an admin, right? And then the finance thing, as much as I could do it, it's just time consuming. And I just did not have the time to do it. So I had to
Mhm.
have a finance person. So, like, no matter what happens with the company, you can rest assured I always have an admin and I always have a finance person. And that is the advice that I give to people is figure out what you're good at and what brings you energy and do those things. And then hire
Mhm.
people to do the other things that you either don't have time for or you don't have the energy for because we don't have the energy for everything, right? There's a
Yeah,
limited amount of time and energy for all of us. So,
Mhm.
yeah. So I would
totally.
say that's probably the biggest thing was just the time that it takes to do all the things that you need to do to run your own business.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I
And I
think
think that
the mental overloads that happen sometimes, right? When you mentioned it there when what you were saying about how these big businesses, they break everything down so small, right? And such individualized roles. And when you're a business owner, right, you're wearing all of those roles, right? You don't necessarily think to break them down that small, but you really have to, right? Like you really have to start thinking about how detailed do I need to get about understanding all of this so that maybe at some point I can hand this off to somebody.
And I've been really fortunate, right? So they do like I'm embarrassingly going to tell you this. This will be out, whoever will listen, but they tease me because they call me Murphy Brown because I tend to sort of move through admins, like seriously, because the admin job, I may ask them to like add this piece on and add this piece on. And I've mostly had part-time admin roles. So, right, some of the admins have left because it's a part-time role, they want a full-time role. So, but right. And that's what they want to
Yeah.
do. And I don't necessarily have that opportunity for them. Sometimes I do. But the other thing is the complexity of that admin role is
Mm,
just, you can't even like there's no job description that can really
Mhm.
describe all the things you need an admin to do.
yeah.
So, yeah, right? I mean, things come up and you're like, "Hey, can you use my credit card and, register me for this conference? And can you do this? And can you look for flights for me? Because I'm going to a conference, but we're going to visit my daughter. My husband's coming too. He's going to need a flight as well. And by the way, we don't want to stay in the hotel conference, conference for the hotel that they picked. We want this hotel. So can you get us, it's just like,
Yes.
and that blur of, in corporate America, in a million years, I would have never asked any of my admins to book a personal trip for me. But in a
Hmm.
small business where it all sort of intertwines, and yes, you're doing some business stuff and you might tack on a little bit of like how do you even separate? I don't even know how you separate it. So that's like a whole nother thing. So yeah, it's tricky and it's
Yeah,
Yeah.
complicated.
the story of the admin, Kelly and I recently went to a party, right? And it was it was like a 1930s themed party.
Fun.
And we got to like Sunday night, the week before. And Kelly and I looked at each other and went, "Oh, crap, that's on Saturday. We haven't bought outfits. We haven't got anything done. Monday morning, we pulled up. We were like frantically working with our EA going,
Right.
Daniela, please help us out. Like we need some,
Right.
Kelly needs a dress. I need a suit. We need
Right. Yeah.
accessories. We need
Right.
all these things and we have to get it by Saturday. And it was like, please just help.
Please, please save me from myself. This is what I say to my admin all the time, and she's amazing. It's like, save me from myself.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So besides, I would say hiring for your weaknesses is such a good piece of advice. So leaning into the other side, the mistake side, what are mistakes that you made maybe early on that shaped how you lead today?
Yeah.
And it's a
So
little
I
bit
would
tougher.
no, I have so many of them. Holy moly, we could take a whole hour just on the mistakes that I made over the course of, and I don't need it, and I want to say this to people. It's like it's not a mistake, it's just like you're learning, right? And
Right.
so there's
Right.
no way to learn without making mistakes. So I would say the first thing was I did tax accounting as a like my first real serious job as a career. I worked for Aetna. I did tax accounting. Now, I only did the accounting on the sale of their stocks and bonds, and somewhere in my mind made me feel like I could just do my business taxes.
Mm.
Yeah, that cost me about $20,000 in
Oh
mistakes.
my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
You are brave. You are brave.
yeah, I was very brave and very stupid, and but I learned pretty quick. Like I made that one mistake. I was like, okay, so hire an accountant.
Yes.
Okay, that's easy enough, right? And
Uh,
so, having this much knowledge and assuming you have this much knowledge, not a good assumption. So
You
I
know,
think that's a big thing.
But
Yeah.
that's a really good thing that you just shared. I think
Yeah.
there's so many times that we think we know things,
Right.
and there's people's whole positions and whole business models that are dedicated to things, and when we just know a fraction of it, we might be like, yes, we can figure it out. But again, to your point that you made, is that the best where you should focus your time? Or does it make more sense to go, you know what? Accounting was one for us as well. Although we knew right off the bat, we were like, yeah, I don't even know how
Yeah.
to use QuickBooks.
First,
First hire. But,
Right.
learning all that stuff takes time.
Sure.
Hiring a professional can not only, spread your time, it can actually help you enhance your business because you're hiring someone who's an expert in that field. They can do it so much faster than it's going to take for you to learn and
Yes.
catch up to their 25, 30, 40 years of experience.
Yes. And I would say that also works sort of in the reverse, right? So sometimes you bring people onto the team and you have a certain lived experience. Like I have done all these really weird things over the course of my career. And then I bring someone in that all they've ever done is the thing. So then
Hmm.
that sometimes also gets tricky, right? Because, people will say to me, well, Andrea, like you've done all the things. Like, yes, of course it's easy for you, but not everyone, even though someone says, oh, I have this experience, they're not necessarily going to have it at the depth that I might have it just because of the variety of work that I've done over the course of my career. And so I think that's difficult for me to judge because I'm always thinking like, well, yeah, I mean, if you use Microsoft Office, you should be able to use Excel and PowerPoint and all the things. But I forget I was an accountant. Like I was a power user of Excel. So
Yeah.
right. So I'm thinking like if you use Microsoft, you can do it all, but you really can't. Like you can't.
Mhm.
It's a
Mhm.
special skill that people learn, well, like you said, Kelly, over years. And so
Yes.
making that assumption and not probing and asking the question of, tell me about your skills. Would you consider yourself an expert or novice? Talk to me a little bit about what it is. And that's helped me sort of probe and really understand who I'm working with and whether or not
Mhm.
they're going to be a good fit for the role that I'm trying to hire for.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting as a consultant, right? People come to you with problems, right? And they
Yeah.
have a desire to change. And one of the things that came up in you and I's conversation and when we first talked was as a consultant, you can't want success. You can't want change more than your client. Like the client, you can't just lead them
Mhm.
to water, right? They have to be willing to sort of, lack of a better way to say it, drink a little bit of the Kool-Aid, right? They have to want it more than you. So, how did you kind of learn that lesson, in that way? How did you learn? Was there a moment you learned that the hard way where you wanted it more than your client and you just saw it fall apart?
I'm still wanting it. I'm like, honestly, I'm still learning it because you can see the opportunity and you can want so much for it to be better. And like, I struggle with it. I still struggle with it. But that was one of the first things that someone told me. So I think about it all the time and I force myself to like back up sometimes and just say like, you know what, you've done all you can, to Shawn. This is the saying I say, you can lead a horse to water, you can splash some on them, some might get in their mouth, doesn't mean they're drinking, right?
Mhm.
And so that's what I sometimes still have to tell myself. And I will tell you what the biggest challenge is, this work is very relational. So I meet the leaders. The leaders are amazing. They tell me like, oh, the people aren't going to tell you. And then the people come and tell me everything. Right. And then the people want me to make it better. Like, the
Mhm.
Mhm.
people, the staff members come and they say, like, this person is not a kind person. Or this person yells, or this person threw something at me, or this person is just disrespectful, or this person is a
Mhm.
racist, or this person is, misogynistic. They come and they tell me all the things,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? They're like, fix it. They're like, you're here with it. And there's right.
Yes. Yes.
And so sometimes, if I have a relationship with
Mhm.
the people, like if I've been working with them long enough and I've built up enough relationship, then I can go to them and say, there's a perception that
Mhm.
some things are happening that I would, if you're open to it, I'd love to share with you and maybe give you some suggestions. And a lot of times in those situations, I'm willing to do some pro bono work because I just want it to be better, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it's kind of those things if there's a relationship. Sometimes folks will hire me because they were told they had to, and they're just sort of checking the box, and the leaders have no intentions of changing. They're not interested at all. They just
Mm.
were told they got to do the thing. And in those
Yeah.
situations, I'm like, it is what it is, right? And I don't even want to splash water on you.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go over here, right? I'm gonna do the thing you're
Yes.
and I'm gonna carry on because I get it. I see
Mhm.
and I understand.
Yeah.
But it does gnaw at me because I'm in a community that I've been in for more than 50 years. And I know so many people in the community that it is hard for me to even think about my community hurting in any way, shape, or form.
Mm.
So I'm
Mhm.
always sort of in the how do I make it better? What can I do? What should I do? Sort of.
Right.
So
I think this is
yeah.
something about who you are as a leader and as a professional entrepreneur, like being wanting to help make people better and companies better. And, you clearly you've seen a lot.
Yes.
And so being able to identify that and not just go like, oh, too bad, so sad, like being
Right.
able to identify and wanting to help, I think that definitely it speaks to your character. So thank you for
Thank
sharing
you.
that. For anyone who's listening and they want to better their culture within their workplace but are feeling really overwhelmed, what's a good place for people to start with? And don't say
Yeah.
pizza parties.
You mean in terms of don't say pizza fries. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. I would say listen to people. Listen,
Mhm.
ask them. First ask them. And then when you do ask them, then listen to them. So everything that we do, we think about these three guiding principles. And every single thing that we do, whether we come talk to you about strategic planning or culture evolution or leadership development or ops support or whatever, we say do these three things well and you will have a solid organization. You make sure you have diverse perspectives in your organization. So what does diversity mean, right? So,
Mhm.
right, age, gender, race, right, religion. height, all the things, ability, mental and
Yes.
physical ability, right? All the things. Grew up in a certain, different state, went to a different college, different socioeconomically, right? Because if you have that resident in your organization, then you have a chance of understanding different people's lived experience. The second is using those diverse perspectives, doing collaborative decision making. So, really making sure that all those folks, you find a way to hear from them on issues that are impacting your organization or impacting the customers that you serve, right? So, that
Mhm.
collaborative decision making. And honestly, when I work with organizations, that's what I'm mostly teaching is how to do collaborative decision making.
Hmm.
Because, right, people think it's one thing, it's another thing. And we do real work on this is how you can do it that doesn't take a lot of time and gives you the information you need. And then finally is shared authority. So this is
Mhm.
where we say, I know you got to your leadership position and you're rocking, right? Now's the time to let somebody else learn. Let somebody
Mhm.
else develop. Let somebody else be the best version of you. And oh, by the way, it makes your work less. So instead of saying, hey, I had a friend call me, like this truly happened. I had a friend call me and tell me how frustrated she is because in her office, they've decided to have shared desk spaces.
Hmm.
And she said there was no conversation. More and more organizations are doing this. This is kind of a
Mhm.
thing, right? Because they're grappling with, people are in the office 3 days a week. They're not in the office 5 days a week, and they want to
Right.
make sure they're making good use of the space. That's not a bad thing. Okay, that makes sense.
Sure.
She has a special accommodation, though. She has a special chair that she uses. And what does she do? Like, she comes in, she gets a space. There are certain people that have been there longer that get to sit by the window. And now, who gets to sit by the window? I mean, there's something about real estate,
Mhm.
even when we go to work, right? It's like we do
Hmm.
feel like
Mhm.
it's our own space, right?
Yeah.
And so I kept saying to her, I said, well, what problem are you solving? Like, what problem is this solving? Which is always a lot of times my first question, right? Trying to get back at that. What is the root cause? And I
Hmm.
said, well, did
Right.
you have conversations about it? She said, well, no. She said, they told us they were doing it. I don't consider that a conversation. And I said, yeah,
Mhm.
you're right. That's not really a conversation. And so I said, well, why don't you ask, what problems are you solving and see if there's some openness to make some suggestions about
Hmm.
what could be done? Because she also talked about the fact that, one of the employees just recently had a baby and was going to be asked to like travel all over the place. It was just like all these things that just felt very, excuse me, unfair to her.
Yeah.
And so there does not sound like there's much collaborative decision making. Sounds like they got some
Yeah.
diverse perspectives, right? But not a lot of collaborative decision making or shared authority. And I'm making this shape because our model is like three little pieces,
Yeah.
right? It sounds like there's a lot of hierarchical decisions being made there. Sounds like, the decisions are being made in a vacuum with one or two people, but this is a real issue that many organizations are facing. So why not bring folks together and say, we're thinking about this before you've made the decision, spent the money on the moves, because that also costs money too, right?
Yeah.
We're thinking about this. What ideas do you have? And take those in and then go back. Like maybe you can't do everything. Maybe it's cost cutting, but say that. You can say that to your people without saying, we got to cut, $500,000. That means we're going to eliminate three. But you don't have to even say all that. You could
Right.
say, we're worried about the expenses. We
Mhm.
need to make some changes. We've noticed not everyone's coming in, right, every day. We're thinking about doing this. Give us some ideas. And then when you pick the things that the people have suggested, you go back and say, hey, we heard you, and
Hmm.
here's what we did as a result
Mhm.
of your input. And we appreciate you for this.
Yeah.
Right. And then let them know like what the WIFM is, right? What's in it for you? Here's what's in it for you for us making
Mhm.
this change.
Yeah, that approach of collaboration and curiosity,
Sure.
right? I think it's a lacking thing these days, right? Because the more we can work together, right? The more we can start seeing other people's perspectives and opinions. Yes, it creates more complexity. Let's be honest about that,
Mhm.
right? It does create a lot of complexity,
Yes.
but it can also create better solutions, right?
Yes. Yes. Because in all of this, people have to change, right?
Mhm.
You can change a process, but the only way the process changes is if the people do the things differently.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So, one of the first questions that I ask folks is like, what is an organization? Tell me what an organization is. You start there. I'm like, well, it's some people, they do eventually get there. But I'm like, right, it's not the tables, it's not the chairs, it's not the technology, it's not the building you're sitting in, it's not the desk, it's not right. It is the
Yeah.
people inside the organization that make all the things work. And I don't care what you say. I just did a whole presentation on, why AI is not going to replace us anytime soon. And this is real because someone still needs to program AI and someone needs to fix all of the mistakes when it's hallucinating, right? And someone needs to
Mhm.
verify that it's telling you the wrong thing. Who's doing that?
Right, right,
People aren't going
exactly.
there. People aren't going there.
Yes.
Those are the things that, I think about and I ask organizations to think about and really challenge their why. So why are you making that decision and who is it
Mm.
impacting? And are they part of that conversation? And not in an I told you so kind of a way, but more of if you want this change to go smoothly, people need to understand why in order to get lined up behind it to do it. And you need the
Exactly.
people to line up behind it to do it if you want it to be a success. Supports your change management process and builds
Mhm.
trust. And if you build trust, then people do way more than you ask them to do.
Yep. I would say the last piece that you said, I just want to put on a t-shirt and a billboard and blast all over the place. I think you're right on there. We appreciate you so much being part of this podcast and being and sharing your
Mhm.
insights and your wisdom just from the years of your experience along with being an entrepreneur and starting your own business. So thank you so much for being a part of this. What's a way
Thank you.
that people can get in contact with you?
Yeah. So we have a website, www.leadingculturesolutions with an S.com. Find us there. We're also on Instagram. We're also on Facebook. We're all over the place. So yeah, call it. If you're a person that likes to call 860-222-7400. Super easy. Would love to hear from you. But yeah, this was fun.
Yeah. Well, thank you
Awesome.
so much. And we look forward to following your adventure and what you're doing.
Excellent. I look forward to it as well. And good luck to both of you. I feel like I want to interview you now and ask you all the same questions. I bet you have fun stories to tell yourself.
Oh,
Yes. Yes. Thank
All
you.
right.